we're here today to talk about two-spirit identities, because it's important to talk about, there's this month being Pride Month, but also Indigenous Peoples Month, and as well throughout the year and forever in history, certain people get erased and certain people get left out of conversation. So it's important for me to always try to shine the light on people who are left out of other conversations. So that's what we're talking about today. Would you like to give us a little bit about what Two-Spirit means to you?
Yeah, definitely. And Eddie, you are so good at shining the light on what needs light shining on. You are amazing.
Stop.
I appreciate you. First of all, share my shirt. Trans people have always existed. They have always been here and they're never going away. And I have my ribbon skirt on with my bows. Yes, lots of rainbows, lots of happy, my bougie rainbow earrings. But Two-Spirit, it's a term that people think is like an old term, but the actual term just Two-Spirit was coined in the 90s during the, it was in Winnipeg, and I can't remember the name of the conference. I have it, but it was like a queer gathering of Indigenous people, and they decided that the word Two-Spirit was the word that they wanted to foster for that part of our community. Because in our community, to have both the spirits is, well, first of all, we believe everybody has both the spirits. It just depends on what level of that spirit that you have. And before I fully though start, I want to make sure that everybody knows that these are my teachings. These are Cree teachings from my area, from my family, and our experiences. So please understand that no two Indigenous people generally have the same story or the same teaching. And if we do, then we're probably related. So just make sure, because we are an oral society and an oral community, that these are Cree from my area, from my family, and our experiences. So thank you very much for listening and sharing that. And please understand how different Indigenous people we are across this space.
And that was the reason they gathered at the conference, mainly from my understanding, was to kind of gather and share those different stories.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to share all the different teachings of what like the queer continuum looks like from all of our different communities, and really gather and bring the love and light to our most precious people. So way back when, pre-contact, pre-colonization, our Two-Spirit people, whatever part of the queer continuum that they lived in, whether it be what these English words now that we use would be to like trans, queer, well, queer is an all-encompassing one word that has been reclaimed, and that's the word that we like to use at home. My son chose to explicitly use that word in our house because he wants to, first of all, reclaim that word, and it's easy for him. He's like, the queer community, so that's what we use. So if anybody's uncomfortable with that, that's why we use it in our house. It was chosen by my son, who came out at 7 as a trans male, and we love him and we're so proud of him. So that's why I use it, because he chose it and I want to honor what he wants. So, and then we call it the queer continuum, because some days he wakes up and he wears skirts and makeup and does his hair curly, but he's still a boy. So I think that's what the honoring is the different levels. We all have the male and the female spirit, and we all honor it. Some people, though, have a little bit more of the male spirit, or a little bit more of the female spirit, or a little bit more of the balanced spirit, non-binary spirit, right? But those are your spirits, not your physicality of your body. Those are two different things, right? Your spirit that you're honoring as a male and you feel very feminine that day to wear a dress, they're two different ideas, they're two different thoughts. So to be able to be very fluid within that concept and that continuum is what Indigenous people truly believed long before contact. So before contact, our two-spirit people, whatever part of the continuum is that the people who identified as the gatherers and the hunters and sorry, not gatherers, the hunters and the warriors and the people who what most people would call male jobs, but there were women that did them. There were all people that did them. So, but they would be considered more a male dominant job. When they would go out and do that work, the two spirit would change into men and protect the community, protect the women and the children and the grandmothers, the elders, the grandfathers, and protect the community because they didn't go out with them if they didn't want to. And then when those people came back, they would switch to the woman heart. And then if families were having trouble, they would be the ones that would go in and help families reconnect and regain their trust with each other. If families were having a hard time, those people would be the ones in the community, the leaders of the community that would bring families back together. And it sounds like a big responsibility and a really hard job, but prior to contact, these people, our people, were trained from the moment the grandmothers found them or identified as that, they were trained in that work. That was their divine work for the rest of their lives, and to be honored with that as a two spirit, have both the spirits is probably one of the greatest, I want to say one of the greatest honors in our community, because that means the Creator, first of all, touched the person who carried you in the uterus. The Creator chose that body to carry a sacred entity that will be gifted to the community for care and love. And to be a person who, blows the eagle whistle and calls the spirit from the other side and carries and fosters the love and growth of that individual, and then to bring them to this earthly planet means that you are like birthing from a colonial perspective Jesus within our communities. That's how special our people were. So when contact happened, of course they wanted to get rid of them because they were our most sacred. They were our most revered and carried all that knowledge and love, and that's how you destroy a community, is by getting rid of women, children, and their most sacred. And for us and my teachings and what I've always learned is that the ones who live in the queer continuum are our most sacred, and we need to hold them to that and hold them up because they have knowledge that some people can't even access. I can talk forever. It's 11:14. Keep me on track of time because we have generations of knowledge, and an hour's not a lot.
Well, that was a beautiful...
Did that answer it?
Yeah, it's a beautiful description and a beautiful way of, I think, encapsulating multiple experiences, even just as you say from your experience and the stories that you hear from your community and from your family. And so you talk about that these are kind of the understandings of the Cree people in southern Alberta.
Northern
Alberta.
Oh, busted. Southern Alberta or Blackfoot.
Busted.
Yeah, Grandma Ruby.
Yeah.
Eagle Child. She's from this southern Alberta. Love you, Grandma Ruby.
She was here just the other day.
She was.
Which was a blessing. I know that there are many misconceptions about ceremony and about the gendered aspects of I think ceremony in particular, but also just like you mentioned, the roles in which we occupy in our community. So how do Two-Spirit people fit into that? How do we make the intentional spaces for Two-Spirit while also giving space in the community, in the community ceremonies and in the
Yeah. I think the most important thing to honor, especially right now, there's a lot of people, like just humans in general, trying to figure out who they are, where they belong, what they want. And I think all of us deep down are born kind of genderless. You know, we come out and I think, you know, we're all just trying to figure out where we are. We're born with these body parts. We're expected to hold these roles. But at the end of the day, like, I think we just need to foster what human beings want and where they want to fit in. And you know, I in our house, we have a fairly traditional family. Not really, actually, at all. We have my husband, my partner, and I. We have 5 children. We built our family through adoption, and my children have disabilities because of colonization and colonial harm that was done to them prenatally. And you know, my oldest is trans, and it's something that we have walked beside him for over a decade in his journey. And you know, my husband's a stay-at-home dad of 5 children, and 20 years ago or 17, 18 years ago, that was not okay. I was the working parent, and I still am today the working parent, and he's still at home with our 5 children, raising them in a really good traditional way. Traditional as in indigenous traditional, not this colored job thing. In our house, we say we have purple jobs. It's everybody's job to make a household run. And
truly,
I think that's the first thing we got to do. We have to stop forcing people into gendered stereotypes and expectations on them. You know, just because I ended up marrying a white male does not mean that I only ever loved men, right? I think we need to foster people just making amazing connections with humans that they love. Some people, yeah, are very much so. One of my sons is very much so. I'm a boy. I have crushes on girls, and that's that. And that's fine. That's totally cool. That's his choice. The thing is, though, is that was his choice. That wasn't our expectation on him. Our expectation on him was to learn how to be a good person, learn how to be accepting, learn how to walk in ceremony and humility, and not in the colonial sense of humility. Again, there's a lot of misconceptions of humble means that, you know, I struggle with the colonial version of it, but humble for us from my teachings are that you may know lots, but the humbleness is that you walk into a room and you don't know anything. I don't know anything. And I think the more, and I've been told, the more you say you know, and you say you know it all, the creator will take you because you're done, you know it all, right? Then you're done on this space. So in a humble way, you always walk that, you know, I don't know anything. And I think that's what really fosters people to be who they want to be. And even with my son, when he came out and said he was a boy, I didn't know what that meant. Like, I have always been just very fluid with everything. And when he said, I'm a boy, and I said, oh. And I went, well, what does that mean to you? And he said, shop in the boys section of
good
clothes.
answer.
And I was like, okay, cool, from a 7-year-old, right? But I had no idea, and I didn't want to put any ideas of what I thought it should be or what that should look like. So it was very led by him. I want boys' clothes. Okay, let's go through your closet and donate, because we don't throw away, we give to others. in a humble way, you know, what do you want? And he kept some dresses. And I was like, I don't understand what that means. And him and I talked about it because in our house, we only have 2 rules. You tell me the truth, because I don't care what you have to tell me, whether it's, you know, sex or, you know, masturbation or gender identity or surgeries, like changing your body surgeries, gender affirming care surgery, or just cosmetic, right? Like, if that makes you happy, we're gonna have a conversation about it. There's nothing we can't talk about in our house because shame means we're embarrassed by something, and in our house we are not embarrassed by anything. We are awesome the way we are. So we have surprises in our house, but no like secrets or hiding anything. So yeah, we just continued on that conversation, and then the next thing was when he started having a period, and that was, you know, very traumatizing to him. But I didn't realize that, and it wasn't until, like he said, I want to start that medication, and he was 14 years old, 13 years old, 12 years old. I don't know, because the pandemic, I don't understand time already to start with.
Mm-hmm.
You're welcome for being here on time.
Yeah.
But when he started his period, whenever that was, he would refuse to go to school, and I was like, well, just use the gender neutral bathroom. Like, I don't understand. And he said, Mom, and I said, what? Tell me, like, what do you want me to do to help you? I'll do whatever it takes. And I think I'm not protecting you how you need to be protected right now. And he said, you know, if I go to the boys' bathroom and I take out a pad and it wrinkles, I'm outed. They know I have a vagina. And I was like, oh, I never thought of that. Because for me, yes, I look like a girl. I have boobs and a vagina, and I'm married to a man, and I have children, and they call me mom, and people call me sister and daughter, but I'm just a human being. I'm just Lindsay walking through this world trying to just be a good person and raise good people and stop, you know, I'm a recovering asshole, so I just need to continue stop being an asshole. So, yeah, I just didn't even think of it. Like, I hated my period. I hated it. I had been fighting to get a hysterectomy since my, like, late 20s. And I'm now 42. Like, but I didn't think of it like that. And then how he described it as, like, black poison coming out of his body. And he hated it. And every time he looked at himself, he was disgusted that this black poison was oozing out of his body like a disease. And I went, oh, that's what you think of it. Okay. What do you need? He said, Mom, I need it to stop. Okay. And we're in the middle of a pandemic. Okay. We'll figure it out. And you know, this misconception that kids are running to doctors and doctors are just prescribing medication to stop, you know, these growth hormones is the biggest lie that can be out there. And it's really disheartening because then parents like me get labeled as these groomers, which I get called a groomer quite often, which I really don't care because I'm not. I know who I am, I know where I belong, and I'm very strong in my identity as an Indigenous person and as an adoptive parent and as a parent and as an auntie and as a protector. So call me whatever you want. I don't give a shit. Just don't hurt anybody I love because that won't end well. That won't end well.
Yeah. So when it comes to, because I know and can relate to those feelings of, like, very vulnerable feelings when it comes to a period and what that feels like, and it feels very not only vulnerable and close to who you are, but to me, it makes sense and it feels spiritual as well.
Mm-hmm.
How does that fit into ceremony?
Right. So with ceremony, he used to have to sit on the female side.
Yeah.
And then we would talk to grandmas that were running ceremony, and then he sat on the boys' side. And then he would sit literally wherever he wanted at that point. If he felt more feminine, masculine, and in ceremony, there's a lot of like, this is what men do, this is what women do. And that's something we need to really cherish and protect. And because our people on the queer continuum were almost erased from the ideology of a cowboy culture, and a lot of it went underground, that I almost think we need to do it from our own perspective now, because a lot of those teachings are lost. And that's what we tried to do, is that in that moment, whoever comes to my lodge, or whoever I'm praying with, or whoever I'm talking to, whoever I'm supporting, however they feel in that moment, if they feel masculine, they can sit on the masculine side. If they feel the feminine, then they sit on the feminine side. If they, it's just we need to honor whatever they want, because we do have these roles, and I think we've lost a lot of those teachings, and it's scary because we want to be traditional and we want to keep to the old way, but it's really hard to have the old way when it's literally been stolen. So I have this, like, how I try to explain it to people is like this pan-indigenous identity that so many people are standing against. But I think of it as, also this is aging me, but Jurassic Park, when they were trying to bring the dinosaurs back, right? They had the DNA strand, and the DNA strand is missing chunks. So that's the pan-indigenous identity, or like even Cree people who don't have, or our 60 scoop survivors, or even our residential school survivors who were never welcomed back to community and are trying to figure out who the hell they are. In our DNA strand, we're trying to plug these gaps with information. So we take from the frog, this frog, and plug these holes to be able to make a full identity of who we are. But then they found that frog's DNA in too many women dinosaurs could turn to men. And then all of a sudden the dinosaurs started to reproduce. So I think this is where we are, is that, we're plugging these gaps of information with the best that we can. And yet there's communities who are really trying to protect what they have. And both of the perspectives are really important. But I think sometimes, especially with our queer community, it has to be led by them. If they want to sit in a masculine position, then they have to be allowed to do it. And I understand that this is not for everybody. Totally, I get it. In our ceremonies, with my family, in my lodge, with our teachings, this is what we do. And I hope more people can feel strength in that and do it. But I don't have control over that. All I can do is always, in a humble way, be welcome and lay tobacco and ask the Creator for the answer, and then talk to my elders. And most of the time they say, Lindsay, if what you feel is what it's supposed to be, whether they do it or not, they support the fact that I really am trying to do it in a very humble, respectful, to our culture and our community way. I hope that answers it. I don't know.
I think it was a very good way to stay humble and to remember that everybody has different very personal ways of going about very personal things.
Mm.
And I love the analogy of the Jurassic Park DNA strand. Genius.
I know, I love Jurassic Park.
I'm using it.
Please, everybody use it. Just say Lindsay told you.
Let's talk. I want to talk a little bit more about the gaps in those DNA strands. So, talking about how we can build community going forward now is one thing. It's also important to acknowledge why those gaps are there, and that is history and colonization.
Yep.
And it is a sad truth of Canadian history, but in order to go forward in humbleness and in community, we need to acknowledge the gaps that are there in the first place, right? So are you willing to, or can you tell us a little bit more about how colonization led us to this place where Two-Spirit people are gaps in our DNA strand?
Yeah. So stop me if I get too political, because that can happen. But it does stem from policy. And that's the hard part of unwinding the two, right? So when we talk about, harm and oppression and shame and separation, so what we need to survive is very basic. People think food and water, but it's not. It's belonging, it's touch, it's community, it's love, it's respect, it's being heard. So if we're upholding policies that continue the opposite of that, of shame, oppression, separation, sickness, death, harm, like those things, right? The opposite of love and beauty, then we're upholding policies of harm, which is the opposite. That's colonization. If we're protecting policies that even sick time policies that people have in their workplace, right? You only get 5 sick days. Well, because people don't have enough vacation days, or Indigenous people don't have enough time to go to ceremony, oftentimes we have to pick between going to work and feeding our family, or going to ceremony, which fills our soul, and we have to have ceremony and not get paid. So people will show up sick to work to save those sick days so they can go to ceremony. So that policy is actually a colonial policy of harm. And businesses are training people to not tell the truth. But yet you get punished for not telling the truth. But people want to tell the truth. But they can't, because the policy states, right, of oppression, shame, and harm. So that's colonial structure. And that's a structure that I didn't agree to. I was forced into this idea. So when we talk about the ideas, differences between like settlers, refugees, Indigenous people, non-Indigenous people, when you talk about settlerism, this is a settler state because the rules are based in what the person who came here, their rules, not our rules. If they were our rules, it wouldn't be a settler state. So it's just, we have to get comfortable with these really uncomfortable words. And we have to say them, right? These policies are supremacist policies, right? White is a color, not a culture. White is a color of your skin. It is not the culture you believe you are from. You need to know where you come from, right? There's Scottish pride, there's Irish pride, Welsh, Dutch, English, I don't know, all those. The color of their skin is white. They don't have white pride. They have their cultural pride. White is a color, not a culture. And then when we talk about things like white supremacy, right? Or these policies of harm and oppression, you're either Indigenous or non-Indigenous. You either support the colonial structure or stand against the colonial structure. Doesn't matter what color your skin is, you can still uphold policies of harm if you're not actively dismantling them. We all do it. I do it.
We have to go throughout the day, every day,
Right?
living in the settler state.
Yeah.
And I know for many people many people can relate to growing up and being and growing up in a culture of gendered separation. But it was a particular strategy of colonization.
Yeah.
Particularly during residential schools, the policing of gender,
Yeah.
and the erasing of diversity.
Yes. But it was a calculated. Like it's not like it was like oops, we did that. It was like, let's sit around a table and create policy of shame, oppression, and harm. We're not creating policy of diversity, love, and inclusion. Even when people say, oh, we participated in inclusion, are you though? Because are you actively trying to change policy? Or do you just think you're doing that? And then when people sit back and really actually question, they're like, oh, I'm still trying to work within the colonial construct when they have the power to make the change. We only make up 5% of the population. So when people are like, oh, indigenous, indigequeer folks coming to the table, well, we don't have enough representation to change the policy to support them. While we're still in the middle of a genocide, on Turtle Island, there was 24 million of us pre-contact. Now we make up less than 5% of Northern Turtle Island population. And most Indigenous people don't even believe that we're Canadian. We're not Canadian. Because that's yet again feeding into a colonial structure that causes harm. So when we talk about Turtle Island, we talk about the top to like South America. We're in the northern part of Turtle Island. And having to show papers to cross a border that doesn't even exist, that's a colonial construct. I participate in it. I have a passport. I do hold up colonial structures of harm. We all do it. And until we all say, yes, we do it. And how do we do better? And then be open and stop hurting our own bloody feelings because somebody said, this is not cool. Oh my God, I'm doing my best. Great, do better. Don't hurt your feelings. I'm not hurting your feelings. You're hurting your own feelings.
I think staying humble is one of the themes we're noticing today, or that that we always come back to today.
Always.
And I think it's important, especially when we're talking about June being Pride Month and being Indigenous Peoples Month.
I love that they're together.
I love it.
Like, it just makes me so happy because we get to celebrate two of my favorite people of my family. My Indigenous family, like who we are as that, and our queer leaders in our community. And they should be leaders. Mm-hmm. They need to be leaders.
It's just such a beautiful opportunity to talk about indigequeer and two-spirit identities and people who live the reality of every month is Indigenous Peoples Month and Pride Month, and every month is we are both.
Yeah.
And
that's why it should not be just June. Every day.
Totally.
Wear your bougie rainbows every day.
I agree. When it comes to conversations such as Pride Month and Indigenous Peoples Month, and conversations that I know that Canada and Alberta specifically are talking about, to use the settler terms. In particular, we're talking about reconciliation, and part of that is the conversation around missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. How do you see Two-Spirit people fitting into that conversation?
So I have done a lot of work with Sisters in Spirit. Shout out to my auntie Bridget Tolley. Hey, she's in Ottawa. Yeah, she is a leader in the movement, and I think she started it because her mom was killed on the reservation, and she's been fighting for a long time for the recognition that they deserve. I am so happy that it's trending towards MMIP, missing and murdered Indigenous people. I love that. That sits really nicely with me. That's what I use because our trans, queer people who are non-binary, like, they're just people. We're people. We're missing and murdered Indigenous people. Let's focus on that. All of us, because our boys go missing, our men are harmed. Because I know the report that came out from the RCMP saying that, oh, the lateral violence, the Indigenous men are doing these things to Indigenous women. Okay, why? Where's the root of it? I can tell you the root of it. It's colonization. So stop blaming people and start recognizing that they're really hurt people. And they're human beings, and they deserve to be loved and heard.
We talk about the iceberg a lot. The tip of the iceberg that shows out of the water is only a fraction of the larger piece of ice that has been accumulating and compounding and compressed and built over generations, years, eons. Time frames. The tip is only just the visible part, and so often there is a larger structure or the tree. The tree is another symbol people use. The roots that have fed the trunk and fed the leaves, and who and how do histories of oppression feed the trees. Or the tip of the iceberg being only what we see, what is underneath.
There's a lot. Like, you have Indigenous people who go into workplaces and try to make change, and then they almost lose their jobs for speaking out. You know, there's all of these people want to identify as an ally, and I got a lot to say about allyship. I guess that's for another day because we have 15 minutes left. But in allyship, you can't speak out of both sides of your mouth. You can't sit there and say, "Oh, I care about Indigenous and trans people and this," and then not change the policy to bring them to the table. You're holding up supremacy ideology of harm and separation. And that needs to stop. We need to change policies to literally make the table longer and put a chair there. You know, there are groups that are doing really great things in Alberta where they change policies. And I don't know if I'm allowed to say those things. There you go. That completely invite Indigenous voice. They changed their policy. They're like, oh, that's easy. We'll just change the policy. That is what allyship is. When you have people who are like, oh, well, policy takes forever to change, and that doesn't really fit with our equity and diversity. We are not part of equity and diversity. Our Indigenous, our queer Indigenous folks, we are not part of equity and diversity. This is our home. This is our land. And we are Indigenous people. And at every table, at your workplace, if an Indigenous person wants a voice, you put a seat at the table. But until we do that, this reconciliation doesn't happen. And we always talk reconciliation has to happen. We have to, before action can take place, we have to be able to speak the truth. So action it doesn't work. Because it's still not talked about appropriately, using the proper language for the proper atrocities that occur to our people. So, are we in reconciliation? Yes, it's the law. People are doing it because it's the law and it's a checkbox. I think it needs to be done better. There are groups that are doing better, but it's not enough. And I know people are saying, oh, well, it takes time. How much time? How much time does it take?
And it takes time because there needs to be time for the effort to be put in. And I think when we talk about diversity is everything. There's a quote that I love that says the only constant in nature is diversity. Because we are all part of diversity. It is not just the people who are not the majority or not it's not just those diverse people. We are all diversity. And we're all needed.
And we are. The one thing though is when we talk about Indigenous people that carry the creation story to this land, most people can carry 2 passports. My family's from here.
Right.
And I am in part of that group because I do have mixed with my mom who's Dutch. Indigenous people only have one place to go.
Mm-hmm.
So when we talk about diversity and equity and those on this land, Indigenous people are the leaders, and we cannot be part of diversity and inclusion. We have to be the leaders of diversity and inclusion and welcoming people to our home. And we are very welcoming, right? But it's our home and we are welcoming diversity to us.
Yeah.
And that's the difference. That's
Yes.
why Indigenous people cannot be part of equity, diversion,
City.
that, sure. Because it's not like one seat. They have to be at every seat.
Yeah.
Like diversity, yes. But until Indigenous people have a spot at every seat, true inclusion can't occur. We can't include people that don't have their original origin story here. And the minute that people who have the original origin story here, then we can start inclusion and diversity. But if we're left out, then there's no such thing.
And like you say, people who have knowledge of the masculine and feminine bring more knowledge to the table. Period.
Yeah.
I want to make sure we have questions that we can answer.
I didn't go over time. See, I told you guys I suck at time.
That's okay. I got you. If we have questions from the community or from online, and see if we can get some questions answered to talk about or to bring you folks into the conversation. So if there are questions that we can ask Lindsay, then please do. You can send them over chat, or we can read them out, and however which way you feel good.
Yeah, well, I just saw something pop up of safety, and that's a really big thing. Like, great, you're welcome to spaces, you're welcome to areas. If you're an Indigenous person who speaks out hard, you often get exited. The door kicks you in the ass faster than you know it. I hold the land speed record for that, yes. And that's the other thing, is that Indigenous people who want to come to the table, even if it hurts your feelings, you can't kick us out. We have to stay. You have to listen. It's life or death for us. It's not what the next 10 years trajectory is going to be. It's, are my kids going to be alive? So this isn't just, let us be there, listen to us. This is life or death for a lot of our people. And it's really important. and being safe and knowing that you can speak out and say truth and not lose your job, that needs to happen more than anything, because that's another big struggle. And that's why so many Indigenous people don't say anything. So please, just listen and provide safe spaces. Cultivate that. Oh, just name dropped. Cultivate safe spaces. Okay, sorry.
No apologies. Are there any questions from Instagram or anything? Cool. We have a lot of thank yous coming in. A lot of really beautiful affirmations and with yous and hearts and thumbs up.
I'm for hire to talk to you.
Hold on, my friend. Give me 2 seconds.
Hold on. I think we have somebody talking.
There you go. Hit us with your question.
Hi. So yeah, Lindsay, I'm obsessed with you. So sorry, that's alarming.
I love it.
Also, like, if you ever want to, because I am Indigenous and I work for the government. So if you ever want to start a business where you just like write me voice notes to like hype me up because I have to fight everyone, I would love that.
Am I allowed to put a website, like a link up or something like that?
We can put a link to the chat.
Okay, so I'm gonna give you an email, but see, can I put a link in there? I don't know how to do that.
Yeah, because I also and I do have a genuine question. So like, I work for the Human Rights Commission, and as part of my role, I help facilitate the Indigenous Advisory Circle. So it's like folks from all over. And one thing, like, we do have a Two-Spirit member on our team, but like after talking with them, we don't. We also want to bring in like more community voices and more like opportunities to engage with outside organizations. Because if you have the same folks on the circle for a long time, it's like we're not as engaged. So I was wondering if you ever do like or if SafeLink does as well, like trainings, or would be willing to like come talk to the circle.
Oh, I do training. Don't you worry.
Okay.
Cousin Shelly, drop the link in the chat, please, because I don't know how to do it from here. But yeah, and I think that's where it gets hard, right? Because now I am not, please don't anybody think I am participating in lateral violence, because I am not. I would never do that. Where I am concerned about in our communities is that people hold these seats and they perceive that they have a voice and they get protective of and comfortable where they're at. And let me tell you, you ain't gonna bite the hand that feeds you, right? Do you Why would you? Because you're getting first class tickets on airplanes, you're getting hotels, you're getting per diems, you don't have to work the low paying job, because we know that Indigenous people don't hold high ranking jobs. And if they don't want to go to college dropout here, but devote their life to ceremony, which I have been doing for 22 years. I have devoted my life to my teachings and my community. Even though I was born in my community, we all step away and come back, but for 22 years, I've devoted every ounce of my heart and mind to our medicines and teachings. And that's not valued. So that needs to stop. We need to give people who are sharers of our knowledge that. And I think, the people who sit at these tables who are not pushing harder, because let me tell you, they're going to get the exit door pretty darn quick and not welcome back when they say stuff that I say. So that's the first thing that needs to change. And then we need to understand that, people are people, and people who don't stand up against it, when Indigenous people don't stand up against it and seem to kind of like placate to the supremacy ideology, I don't blame them. Why would you bite the hand that feeds you? I like first class tickets. I like sitting in hotel rooms. I like traveling. It's not their fault. It's again, people using their status to oppress our people. but blanketing it in a lie that they're trying to be better.
And Shelley has just put the QR code in the chat for people who want to take a look, and the link.
Does that answer your question? And cousin, you just give me a call and I'll be there.
That's perfect, because it makes me so angry to have to say it, that like at my position, because we're an independent commission, my boss and my boss's boss are very open, and I'm very lucky in government-wise that they're so open and willing to learn, but also I hate that I have to be like, oh my god, I'm so lucky, because that makes me want to scream into a bag. So, yeah, I'll definitely be using this, and you will hear from me. Thank you so much.
Please, like, people always say they want to call me, and then I get offended that they never call me. I think they think I'm crazy.
We do have another question. Someone asks, is it fair to say that the intersection of English language of queer identities and other languages of queer identities overlap, and it can be complicated? So is it safe to say that that not all Two-Spirit are trans, but some are, and clearly not all trans people are Two-Spirit, because that's specific to Indigenous people.
Yeah.
But not all Two-Spirit people might identify or understand themselves as trans.
Yeah, so complicated. That's the first thing. And understand that only Indigenous people can use Two-Spirit. That's the first thing. We are not Two-Spirited. We are not cheerleaders. Two-Spirit, right? And we're also not past history.
Mm-hmm.
We are current. They are thriving. We are amazing. So, Two-Spirit, always use that. I say always use Two-Spirit first. Put them first before you talk about the queer continuum. And ask. If an Indigenous person says, I'm trans, then don't label them. Stop labeling people with what you perceive them as. Listen.
And use the
Do
words
what they
that
want.
they use for themselves.
Right? And that's the same. Like, I have one more thing before people start leaving, because I'm happy to sit for days and talk. I can talk forever. And I'm very aware of that. But when we talk about pronouns, the one thing, please, that I want to put out is that everyone talks about pronouns, and that means inclusion. If you share this teaching, it's mine. But you can take it. When you wear pronouns, it's not about recognizing or making people feel like they can say their pronouns. What it is when my son's alone in a mall, and it's happened where he's been chased and he's been beaten up, I tell him, don't run to a cop. Sometimes it's scary for us. I tell him to find somebody who's wearing a pronoun pin, because he might be able to live another day. So wear your pronoun pin, not to prove that you're inclusive. Wear it so my son can live another day. So that's what pronoun pins should be labeled as and put out as. Yes, inclusion, yes, that's great, but it's about surviving. So wear your pronoun pin. If you don't wear your pronoun pin, it doesn't matter. Because if you're not ready for that, what's more dangerous is for you to wear a pronoun pin. My son runs to you, but because you're not ready to be an ally and you haven't thought where you fit, he's jumping into a fire that he doesn't know. So if you're going to do something, you make sure you're ready to do it. Because if you don't do it right, people will die. Our people die.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone.
And I'll get off my high horse now. That was from the aunties. They have a lot to say.
Thank you for everyone for joining us, and thank you for truly, truly always talking and continuing to talk.
Sorry.
No apologies. I do not accept it. I will always want to continue conversation with you, and I never want to stop. And unfortunately, we're constrained by colonial time. So
I say that's crap.
So
I'm happy
please
to keep talking, but if you have to go, you can go.
keep joining us in future conversations and ongoing conversations, and join Lindsay for continued conversations. Go back to your community and continue conversations, and don't stop talking. And don't and stay humble is our teachings from today.
Always. If you're gonna burn a building down, do it humbly.
Thank you everybody for coming, and thank you everybody for joining on Instagram.
This is my
live.
baby, my 2-year-old. She does hearts like this. Her auntie tried to teach her.
Gosh, that's
right,
cute.
Auntie Shelly? She does this.
Oh, that's cute.